Yo, 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 BD Lee in the house! I thought about rebranding myself to be hip with the kids. Since Ghetto Smosh's channel is down, I see a hole in the market. Welcome to BD Lee, my second thought. I like the old style. Hey y'all, BD Lee here. Sega confirmed at the recent Game Awards that they have given the green light to a multitude of anticipated sequels. In celebration of this recent event, I've decided to catalog the rarest game on each Sega console. Not just the rarest, however, the 3 rarest games on each console. Why? I feel like some of the segments in the last video were way too short, so I've decided to do 3 games on each console and see how that ends up. Maybe I'll make a sequel to the Sony video after this, I don't know. The rules. I got these prices on GamePriceChart.com. No collector's editions or special editions. If you want to play a game, you don't need a statue of a zombie woman's torso to play it. I'm not reviewing a game, unless I just happen to have played it. Games must have been released to the public to play them. If it was leaked out without the company's approval, it doesn't count. The game must have been released in North America at some point. Well, I think that's everything. Let's make like Sonic the Hedgehog and zoom to the first console. That's lame. Let's make like Kiryu and fight. Let's start the video. All you US watchers might be wondering what the Master System is. The Master System was Sega's original competitor to the NES we all know and love. It came out in America in 1986 and was heavily overshadowed by Nintendo's behemoth, partially due to Nintendo's draconian exclusivity rules, but whatever. First place for the rarest games features one of the pettiest games to ever come into existence. James Buster Douglas Knockout Boxing, they put his nickname there not to confuse you with the other James Douglas who boxes, is a game released exclusively in North America to promote the recent heavyweight champion. The heavyweight champion who just so happened to have defeated Mike Tyson. You know, the guy Nintendo put on their game? Yes, this game was made because Sega wanted a boxing mascot that beat Nintendo's boxing mascot. This is some high school level shit right here. This game is called Final Blow across the rest of the world, meaning this is the one region where you can find this game under this name. Oh yeah, this game also had a low print run given the fact it was a North American exclusive. The game also had a port on the Genesis, which not only is way cheaper, but somehow inferior in quality. Don't get it twisted, the Mega Drive port sucks too. According to SegaDoes.com, the Genesis port can be 100% beaten in only a few hours. But even that long might be too long to take this game. Also, remember how Punch-Out has comically stereotypical boxers worldwide? Glass Joe from France, Piston Honda from Japan, King Hippo from Birmingham. Sure, Nintendo claims he's from the South Pacific, but come on, look at him. The beer belly, the teeth, the voice. Moving on. Here you get to fight the Korean Comet, the South American Eagle, which just sounds like a species of bird, and I shit you not, the Black King. That's right, you get to fight the king of black people in this game. You know, I just got done talking about someone who might want to do that. Moving on to third place, we have Golden Axe Warrior. This game received positive reception at the time, but was later criticized for being a Zelda ripoff. And it's kind of hard to defend, I mean, look at it. But according to my sources, it's a solid game. Not $173 for the cartridge alone solid, but solid nonetheless. The reason this game ended up being so rare was, 1, it was released late in the Master System's lifespan, 2, it's a decent game from a well-known series, 3, the only time Sega re-released this game was on the PS3/Xbox 360 Sonic Ultimate Genesis Collection. In case you want to play any of these games, don't worry, every single one is easily obtained via emulation. The Genesis. The first console to put up a good fight against Nintendo. In America, anyway. Around the world, it's a different story. You see in Japan, there's the TurboGrafx 16, and...
Get on with it! Yes! Get on with it!
Right. First place for the rarest game on the Genesis goes out to the hip new animal mascot who's instantly recognizable. Outback Joey. What? You don't remember Outback Joey? He was the rapping kangaroo from that one movie. Wait, no, that's Kangaroo Jack. Who are you? And why do you cost
What the hell is even that?
Outback Joey was a game to be played on the Heartbeat Personal Trainer, a tool to help people exercise alongside gaming. You pretty much needed an exercise bike for this to function properly, something I'm sure every 90s gamer had lying around. It was also exclusively released in the US. Only 1,000 of these peripherals were produced and it still had abysmal sales. The peripheral cost $299 at launch, but the Catalyst, which was built for those who already had a Sega Genesis, was sold for $199. Here's the problem. A normal Sega Genesis was sold at launch for $189, meaning you paid almost double for a fitness machine with like 4 games. So in short, not many people bought a peripheral in the only region where this peripheral was sold. Despite this game only being playable via exercise bike, some mad lad actually got a ROM of this game working on a Sega emulator. So you can play this game. I don't know why you would choose this over, I don't know, anything else, but whatever. Next up, we have a game made by the king of obscure games that will cost hundreds of dollars down the road. Atlus, who made Crusader of Centy. Funnily enough, this game is once again a Zelda clone, but to call it a simple Zelda clone would be a bit of an insult. Firstly, the character's sword doesn't magically shoot lasers, he just chucks it at enemies, and it comes right back to your hand like a boomerang, which is badass. Also, this game utilizes a Mario World-like overworld, rather than the traditional open world that most Zelda games use. Lastly, unlike Zelda, the game doesn't rely on items, instead you equip animal partners to help you perform anything. Freezing enemies, faster running speed.
Not a damn thing!
One thing I found hilarious is the US versus UK animal names. The penguin in the US is named Chili, which is a cute name for a penguin. In the UK, its name is Penguy, which is the absolute worst name for a penguin I've ever heard. The dog's name in the US is Mac, which is a fine name. In the UK, its name is Johnny. Do you know what Johnny means in British slang? Condom. Another neat mechanic is being able to mix and match the animals to get different powers, kinda like the power-ups in Kirby 64. Like pairing Chili and Dodo, who's a dodo, to drain the opponent's HP when you hit them with your Ice Blade. The reason this game was rare was because it had a low print release in the US. It's a neat looking game you can either play by getting a Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack, or, well, I'm sure you know the other way to play it. In third place we have Musha. Musha is a top-down shmup that was relatively ignored back in the day, only for it to gain praise years later by retro collectors. Musha, which stands for this pile of words I'm not in the mood to pronounce, for a shmup is short and beginner-friendly to boot. But Musha is most well known for its kick-ass soundtrack. This game utilizes a beautiful composition of speed metal that just listen. Perfect to get you in the robot killing mood. Should you want to play this game legally, it's also available on the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. However, if you'd rather not spend $50 a year... Fellas, I believe we're all aware of the RAREST Saturn game. This game is the holy grail for Sega owners. If you asked a Sega fan if they would trade their firstborn child for this game, I'd harken a guess that 99% of them would say yes. You can always have a second kid, but how many copies of Panzer Dragoon Saga are you going to come across? Panzer Dragoon Saga is a unique entry in the Panzer Dragoon series. Unlike the rest of the series, which is a rail shooter, this game is a turn-based RPG. For comparison, imagine if Star Fox went from Star Fox 64 coming out, then the next game had gameplay similar to Paper Mario 64. Actually, that sounds way more interesting than Star Fox Adventures. See, I just came up with that on the spot. It's a wonder why Nintendo hasn't responded to my application. The reason for this was the president of Sega instructed Team Andromeda to create an RPG that would sell more than the PlayStation Final Fantasy series. A monumental task considering that Final Fantasy VII sold over 10 million copies and became the second highest selling game on the PS1. For reference, the Saturn sold approximately 9.26 million units worldwide. The game was well received and is loved to this day by 9 out of 10 Sega Saturn fans, which means only one Sega Saturn fan didn't like the game. Yeah, that's the first reason this game cost so much. The Saturn failed due to a plethora of unfortunate circumstances, one of those circumstances being a post-Genesis Sega property. Rest in peace, Sega CD, 32X, Nomad, Pico, and countless franchises. By the time this game was released, Sega was licking its wounds and preparing to release the Dreamcast, a console well remembered for its immense success and dominating the console generation.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
The game also had a rumored 20,000 units shipped to the West. Despite this, it's still undersold, and Sega left it in the dust. For years, the Saturn's hardware was impossible to emulate, leaving this game permanently stuck on the Saturn, until less than a year ago, when Chronos was released. Magic Knight Rayearth is a manga series published in 1993, and is well remembered by those who read it. The story is about 3 8th grade girls from different schools who go on a field trip to Tokyo. During their trip, they discover a different world. In this world, they're tasked with saving Princess Emerald from High Priestess Zagato. Now, despite the manga not being published in America until 1999, the game was released here in late 1998. Plus, be honest, it's 1998, you find this game with this cover, are you gonna feel good about bringing this to the front counter? Toonami just came out, nobody watched anime unless you expected to spend the 4th period in a locker. The game is an action RPG where you can switch between the 3 heroines. It's pretty good and can be played on the Chronos emulator. My favorite part of the game is how in the box art they advertise the genre. Like, imagine if more games just stuck their genre on the box art. Finally, 3rd place is a personal favorite of mine, Burning Rangers. I've never played this game, but if the gameplay is half as good as the main theme, this game is an easy 200 out of 10. The reason this game is so rare is probably because the main theme is so good. I refuse to believe there's another reason. Alright, fine. The game's rare mostly due to low sales along with its desirability among retro collectors, just like the other two. What? You don't remember the Sega Game Gear? It was Sega's answer to Nintendo's Game Boy. The console is a handheld device that has a horizontal design, unlike the Game Boy's vertical design. It kinda reminds me of a Leapster, if you remember those. Unlike the Game Boy, the screen not only had color, but was even backlit. Sadly, this led to its major criticism. The Game Gear had a pitiful 3 to 5 hour battery life that demanded 6 new AA batteries every time. Alternatively, the less advanced, yet more economical Game Boy could handle non-stop playtime in the double digits. Plus the Game Gear's library was nowhere near as impressive as the Game Boy's, leaving this console to be faded to obscurity. Number 1 is Mega Man. Don't be fooled, this isn't a remake of the first game. Instead, it uses elements from some of the other games in the series, specifically 2, 4, and 5. It ripped levels straight out of the original NES titles. All of this information I got from the Mega Man wiki, by the way. But this title dares to ask an important question. What if those games sucked? Because they used levels from a game that was meant for a bigger screen, they ended up just crunching the screen and zooming in so closely that certain enemies and platforms aren't visible. It's generally accepted to be a lackluster compilation of Mega Man levels. So why is it so desired? Once again, the wiki comes in clutch by informing us this was a North American only release by US Gold. So Mega Man fans can cry about how there's another game they can't afford. On the bright side, the game is cheaper than the Misadventures of Tronbon. Up next we have Cosmic Spacehead, a game about an alien who finds Earth, then when his fellow aliens don't believe him, he goes, "Trust, bro." And when that fails to work, he goes around his home planet trying to find himself a vehicle and a camera. And there's something in there about stopping a robot revolution. It's the equivalent of winning the Revolutionary War on your way to pick up the paper. The game is partially a point-and-click adventure and partially a platformer. Why is it rare? No idea. The price of this game just went up recently, right as other prices started to go down. I looked at multiple articles talking about valuable Game Gear games with no information. It was just an honorable mention in one article, and the other article that brought it up only talked about how fun the game was. Number 3 goes to Pete Sampras Tennis, a game that's rare because nobody in the States gives too much of a shit about male tennis. Some people suggest that it's because the game is low quality, but according to critics, it's alright. One interesting detail is that the PAL version is way cheaper. Like if you want the cartridge alone in the PAL region, $32. You want the cartridge alone in the West? $137. The one sentence I got giving any sort of explanation on why it's rare talks about how Codemasters games tend to be more popular in Europe. That's it. The Sega Dreamcast was the last Sega console to be discontinued. I'm kidding, the Sega Pico lasted a whole ass year after this thing. I know what you're wondering, what the fuck is that? Just wait for part 2 when I delve into the Sega CD and 32X. I forgot how many consoles Sega made, and this video would be way too long if I put the top 3 games on every single one. Oh, also the Master System is still being produced in Brazil. But about the Dreamcast, this machine fathered so many cult classics. Space Channel 5, Skies of Arcadia, Power Stone, a series I'm shocked never made it to this list. While we're talking about obscure Capcom titles, let's talk about Cannon Spike. You know Smash TV? It's a twin-stick shooter, multi-directional shooter, released in 1990. You play as a contestant on a game show where you try and kill as many attackers as possible to gain rewards. Now, imagine if you got this game, gave it to Capcom, and told them to make it a crossover. You'd probably get something like Cannon Spike. In this title, you play as either Charlie or Cammy from Street Fighter, Arthur from Ghouls and Goblins in the middle of his roided-up midlife crisis, 2 original characters who are based on other Capcom characters, kinda like Sun from Marvel 2, and as hidden characters, you have Mega Man and BB Hood, who's riding a Razor scooter. The game was released super late in the console's lifespan. In fact, it was the last game to be released on the Dreamcast in the PAL region, exclusively sold at Game Retail Limited stores. So if you think $300 is bad, you could try and get a PAL version for $450. It's this, alongside the fact it's never been re-released, that's helped it become so valuable. Here's hoping we get this game in one of Capcom's collections. They've been on a roll with those lately, so maybe we could get a collection with this, the Power Stone series, and Project Justice. While we're at it, let's talk about another series that ought to be on this pipe dream of a game collection. Gigawing, specifically Gigawing 2, costs almost $300 case and box. Hard to believe it was released for $20 initially. Gigawing 2 is a bullet hell shmup that's dead set on giving you motion sickness. The game was released fairly late in the Dreamcast lifespan, by which I mean 1 month after even Sega stopped caring about it. It's kind of funny, seems like Capcom wanted to keep this thing alive more than Sega did. Yeah, this game has pretty much the same reasons Cannon Spike does, except while Cannon Spike was sold by exclusive retailers, Gigawing was a budget title that received poor reviews upon release. Nowadays, however, the collective consensus agrees this game is worth your time, just not worth the money. Third place is Illbleed. At this point, I would love to introduce a new segment, Cooking with BD Lee. Today's dish is a rare Sega Dreamcast game. Add 1 dash of no re-releases. Don't forget to add a tinge of originality, enough to gather a cult following, but not enough for the mainstream to pay attention. Mix those review scores together, and serve on a failed console that's been discontinued. And voila! Your game now costs $230 case and box. As much as I bash Sega for their repeated failures, I can't help but appreciate their dedication to creativity. Like, what other publisher would produce a game where you painstakingly take care of a fish with Leonard Nimoy's voice? Sega has always ended up being the most interesting company to read about, due to their wild gambles, which either end up being revolutionary for the games industry, or a fun story to read about. They have a game where Sonic races his friends through mysterious islands and Egyptian remains. And what's the background music? Techno-funk, sung by a British woman. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Nintendo has yet to make Mario Kart track with actual vocals. In the next episode, I will tackle some of Sega's biggest gambles, the rarest games on the 32X, CD, Nomad, and Pico. Until then, bye for now.